hybrid meeting of the Governance and Audit Committee, which is open to the press and public on request. This meeting will not be broadcast live. However, a recording will be made available as soon as possible after the meeting has concluded. We welcome the use of Welsh language at meetings. I have had no request for people to speak Welsh today, so this meeting will be conducted in English only. Please can members attending via Microsoft Teams refrain from using the chat function and instead use the raised hand icon to indicate when you want to speak. May I remind members that as per statutory guidance made under Section 4 of the Local Government Wales Measure 2011 that our formally adopted hybrid meeting policy, any member attending a meeting remotely must be able to be seen and heard by the members and officers who are attending the meeting, as well as by members of the public viewing the meeting. So can I ask that you all please use your cameras for the duration of this meeting. Please remember to keep your microphone muted when you are not speaking. Moving on to the agenda. Agenda item 1 is the appointment of Chair and Deputy Chair. Please can I hand over to Hayley Hawkins, the Governance Solicitor. Thank you, Hayley.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, all. So what we need to do now is appoint a new Chair of the Governance and Audit Committee. Members will be aware that, in accordance with statutory requirements, the Chair of the Governance and Audit Committee must be a lay member. Therefore, I invite nominations for the position of Chair.
Can I nominate Mrs. Pedgington, please?
Thank you. Any further nominations?
I was about to say I'll second that.
Excellent. I will move to the vote. Seconded. Thank you, Councillor. Excellent. I would. I think we're happy there with Ms. Peggington continuing to be Chair. Thank you very much. So moving on to the Deputy Chair as well then, please. Members will be aware that the Deputy Chair must not be a member of the Executive. So therefore I'd invite nominations for the position of Deputy Chair.
Can I nominate Mr. Kelleher, please?
And I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Any further nominations? No further nominations. So it's been seconded. So Mr. Kelleher will take the position of Deputy Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again, everybody, for your support and re-election. I must be doing something right, so I'll try and carry on as I am.
Excellent, Chair.
Welcomes and apologies. Jade, do we have any apologies, please?
Thanks, Chair. We've had apologies from Councillor Williams this morning.
Thank you. Right. Agenda item 3 is the declarations of interest. Jade, can you ask the members in alphabetical order to state where they have any interest in detail?
Of course, Chair. Thank you. Starting with Councillor Ashley, please.
Before I say anything, Chair, can I tell you that I've got a bad throat infection, which is giving me laryngitis, so I'll keep my contributions as succinct as possible. Please do not comment. Yes, I declare that I'm a member of the pension scheme, which I think I do at every meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Jones, please.
My wife's in receipt of a Torvine pension and I'm a contributor to the members' scheme.
Perfect. Mr. Kelleher, please.
Yes, I have a small pension from Torvine.
Thank you. And yourself, Chair?
My husband has a pension from Torvine.
Thank you. And Mr. Rees, please.
And I, same as others, have a small pension from when I used to work for Torvine. Diolch.
Thanks all.
Thank you, Jade. Moving on to agenda item 4, the minutes of Governance and Audit Committee from the 19th of March 26. I wasn't in attendance at this meeting, so I'm depending on those who were, whether these are correct. Please can you state whether you have anything to raise in relation to the minutes? If not, I'll take them as agreed. Can I just point out that there is a typo on page 4. I think the date should be 2025 December, not 2026 of those minutes that were taken previously.
Thanks, Chair. I'll amend that.
Thank you. And there was also something on item 4.1 that was delayed because I wasn't here. Can I ask what it was that was delayed, please? committee was informed that due to the Chair's absence from the present meeting, the intention was to deliver the briefing at the conclusion of the July 2026 committee meeting to ensure that all relevant decision makers were able to participate. Officers confirmed that the outstanding actions remained under active monitoring and would be completed within the revised timescale. Can anybody?
Yeah, that was to do with, I plan to do an update on the new global internal audit standards after the meeting, but obviously delayed it because of the absence of the chair. I was going to do it after today's meeting, but obviously we one short at the moment, then in the by-elections happening in Llantarn today. So we'll have another member, so I'll do it at the conclusion of the September meeting. Just a briefing to members on the changes with the new global internal audit standards. It's a riveting topic. I'm sure you won't be able to wait till then.
Thank you for that. We look forward to it then by the sound of it. So will that go back on the action sheet so we don't forget it? Thank you. Lovely. No other comments on those previous minutes? Okay, and the action sheet will be updated with that one action. Right, I've been asked to bring forward item 9 instead of moving on to agenda item 6. So it's the panel performance assessment, and I think we've got Stephen Vickers to give it to us, please.
Yes, good morning, Chair, and good morning, members. And thank you for inviting me today, and congratulations to the Chair and the Vice Chair for their re-election. So basically, the report before you today provides the Governance and Audit Committee with an update on the progress made in responding to the panel performance assessment, or we refer to that as the PPA. Now, the PPA was a peer review that was carried out under the requirements of the Local Government and Elections Act. And as members of the panel, the committee will recall, the PPA presented a very positive overall picture of the council. There was recognition of strong leadership, a clear sense of direction, effective governance arrangements, and good relationships between members and officers. It also provided helpful and constructive recommendations on how we continue to strengthen delivery in key priority areas, including the federated approach between ourselves and Blaenau Gwent, our Marmot approach, and our communities work, early intervention and prevention, and to explore further opportunities around communication engagement and organisational development. Now, in response, an action plan was developed, and a draft was reviewed by this committee before the final plan was formally agreed through Council in January 2026. So the purpose of today's report really is to close the loop and provide assurance on the progress that we've been making, and importantly, to show you that the actions that have been taken have been embedded into the way that we're operating day to day, rather than sitting separately from our core business. And I think that's a really important thing to note today. So the report shows that all of the actions then within the plan have been taken forward. In most cases, they've either been completed outright, or they have become part of our normal business as usual activity, and therefore they'll be monitored through existing performance and management arrangements. Appendix 1 provides a detailed breakdown of the progress against each action, and including the RAG ratings that have been applied to give a clear picture of delivery status, including any areas where there's been challenge or delay. And overall, I think this is a very positive position for the council. Solutions have been developed for each point raised as across the PPA review team. The actions arising from the review have not only been progressed, they have been built into the way that we organise our work, which I think really means a positive step for the council. And the recommendation for members today actually is because of the progress that's been made and the status of the plan, that you note the progress made, take assurance that the PPA action plan has been delivered and embedded into that business as usual, and make a decision in terms of the future requirements for this committee. I've got officers with us in the room there. I'm sorry I'm not in the chamber with you today, but it is genuinely as a result of illness, so I'm sorry that I couldn't be there. But I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you very much. It is a very good report. Very interesting to read, actually. Has anybody got any questions, Mr. Vickers? Nobody? Mr. Rees, I see your hand is raised.
Diolch, Chair, and diolch, Stephen, for that. I'm glad that things are all progressing very, very well. I just want clarification on where we go from here now. I think we agreed that you sort of update us, which you're obviously doing here now, but clearly you're saying that it's now, you know, embedded into everything that the council does. So might it be that you report back yearly, or are you suggesting that you don't need to report back because we get updates, because it's part of the, you know, the work of the council, if you understand where I'm coming from? Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's I suppose just the choice is, isn't it? Is there is a risk of duplication if what we're doing is preparing an additional report for the committee in circumstances where the council is already assuring itself in respect of delivery against this plan, or in delivery against the actions that have either been completed or a part of business as usual. Then my suggestion would be that we try to avoid that. I suppose the question is if there are any aspects of the plan, or whether or not you consider the plan as a whole has not yet met the standard required for you as a committee to no longer require to see it or any element of it, then that's a decision that I think you can make today. But my recommendation would be that actually the committee no longer requires to see the plan, and that you amongst other scrutiny groups and performance assessment processes will be able to pick up all the actions as part of a wider governance process. So I would suggest that's the right decision today.
Diolch, Stephen, and I agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ashley, your hand is raised.
Yes, thank you. I'll be very brief on this. I was very pleased reading through this and to see that using the traffic light system, that we didn't have anything in the reds and ambers, and that portrays Stephen's smiling there. I think that's brilliant. And it from a councillor's point of view, a backbenchers doing scrutiny, that's very satisfying. How much hard work did you guys do to get it into that position? Because we obviously have done we've done a lot of work scrutiny-wise on this, and you were obviously portrayed what you did. I'm just intrigued as to how you got there, because that's quite some achievement in the natural course of events.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Ashley. I think that's a fair reflection and a great question. I think officers across the council have performed extremely well and worked really hard. We took this plan, it's very reassuring to me that we took this plan very seriously, and we thought that the panel performance assessment was added real value to us as a council, gave us some reassurance, but gave us some areas that we know that we wanted to target on. I'm pleased to say there were no surprises. It's always nice to know there's no surprises as the chief executive in these circumstances when the panel performance assessment came in and when their plan was put forward. I think what I would say though is two things. One, yes, there's been a lot of work to get us to where we are today. You'll appreciate that the work that goes on is actually continues to evolve, and that's the second point that I would make. So what you've got here in front of you today is quite a lot of activity. It's not all of the activity. There's actually more of it than we would be able to possibly articulate in a single report to you here today. So actually the story is better than it looks, I think, in respect to some of these areas. And these programmes are not sort of one-off pieces. So, you know, just as, for example, the succession planning around senior leaders is an ongoing programme of succession planning. And what you've got in front of you today is just some of that activity with plenty more planned. And that will be true for many other aspects of the plan. So I think, yes, it's been a lot of hard work to get where we have. I think Tom and the team do an absolutely outstanding put a lot of effort into monitoring it, reporting it, holding us to account to make sure that people are, delivering on what they've said, have worked really hard with us to embed and build some of this into our business as usual, and to ensure that we can continue to track it in that way. And from that perspective, I think, yeah, it's been a lot of hard work, but it's really added a great deal of value. And I would also like to thank the officers for all of the work they've done there. As I say, there are some areas that you know, in the future, through one form of scrutiny or audit and governance or another, that we might decide that there's some areas that we want to explore in further detail. But I would suggest that that will be more likely a line by line rather than this plan as a whole, is what I would suggest.
Thank you. Mr. Kelleher, your hand is raised.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think my questions have been answered through the questions of Mr. Rees and Councillor Ashley. So thanks for that.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else got any questions or queries? I did have one query with regards to the volunteering that's going to take part. And you're enabling staff to volunteer within this policy. Is that weekly, monthly, annually? How much? Or is it up to the individual and their line manager? Just curious.
Thank you for the question, Chair. Specifically on the policy for volunteering for council staff, that would be for up to 2 days per year, and it would be arranged through the normal HR team manager processes. But yes, we're trying to encourage as many of our staff to get involved as they possibly can through that new policy position. And that would effectively be an annual offer for staff to get involved in the way that we've suggested.
Oh, that's very good. I hope we got some good uptake for it. Councillor Ashley, let's come back.
Stephen said about report back to this committee. I'm wondering which we're going to go for, occasional, as needed, or regular. I mean, it seems to be regular, and I'm most of the time I'm just wondering where we go with it. I wonder what Stephen's view is on that, because he's alluded to it already.
Yeah, my view, Councillor, if I just respond to that, Chair, is that we effectively can sign off the report for the purposes of you as a governance and audit committee today, and I think any of the items that would naturally come in front of the governance and audit committee, and as I say, there are many items within this plan that would sit elsewhere within scrutiny and performance review, that I think we just have to assure ourselves that those processes are in place and that the council is already operating in an open and transparent way, and that all of these lines are already being monitored, or as is already indicated within the plan, many of them have already been completed and there's no further work to do on them. So I would suggest the plan is today to sign off the report and it not come back again.
I think I'm inclined to agree. It covers such a broad range of things that all these different things will crop up under different headings during our annual meetings. Is everyone happy to do that? The recommendations for this are on page 69 of the agenda. Please can you state if you're against the recommendations or wish to abstain, otherwise I'll take them as agreed and this report will be signed off. Are we all happy? I see nobody saying they're not. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Vickers, for bringing this. I think we can agree that your report has been signed off and no need to bring it to us in the future. We will follow it individually on the different streams that it comes through. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Right, everybody, now that we've taken item 9 out of turn, we'll get back to our agenda. And we'll get back to agenda item 6, which is statements of accounts. The external audit. Sorry, I've lost my plot here. I think it's Rob Green's going to give us the statement of accounts. Sorry, threw me a bit there.
Okay, good morning all. So this report follows on from the one that I brought to the committee in December of last year, which simply gave an update on where we were, because you'll be aware that as a committee you haven't yet received the final audited 24-25 accounts. So I won't go over the reasons why that is delayed. We discussed that last time, but as you'll be aware, that the main takeaway from that update was the fact that we've got a rather sizable restatement of our asset register to do, which we're now doing, in order to get to a point where the auditors can reconsider the accounts and hopefully sign them off and then ultimately certify them. So just quickly to give you an update on where we are. So obviously we had the update in December with yourselves. At that point we were working on a proposal to Audit Wales around how we would address the issues that have been found. So we sort of developed that and put that forward to Audit Wales in late January. We then had some back and forth discussing exactly the nature of it and the sort of audit evidence that would be available to allow the audit to conclude ultimately. We got agreement to, in principle agreement to commence the restatement work in late March of this year. So at the time of writing the report, I said the work was well underway. It's actually well progressed now. So that the kind of substantive work that we needed to do is almost complete. We just now need to look at what it's actually telling us and put forward a revised set of accounts for the auditors to consider. So that's the one aspect. The other aspect is that in parallel with that, we, like all other councils in Wales, have been in receipt of a letter from the outgoing Auditor General for Wales around compliance with statutory accounts deadlines. Each letter was tailored to each authority's situation. So obviously we were one of the authorities who weren't compliant at that point. And the requirement with the letter, which is appended to the report, was that we we share the letter with those charged with governance, hence bringing it today, but also then prepare a recovery plan, setting out how we will ultimately get back on track with those deadlines. So we've done that, and that's what this report then sets out in section 3. So we've been in discussions with Audit Wales, because obviously, as well as our own timescales that we'll need to prepare accounts, we obviously need to work with the auditors' availability as well. So you can see there a table in paragraph 3.1 that sets out our planned timescales for finalising the 24-5 accounts, our planned timescales for preparing and finalising and ultimately auditing the 25-6 accounts, and then our plan for 26-7 onwards. And what it highlights is that we anticipate or see no reason why we wouldn't be back on track for 26-7 onwards. 25-6 is naturally not going to follow the normal timescales, given that we're still grappling with 24-5. But for 26-7 onwards, we've got decent confidence we'll be back on track, which may not sound brilliant, but isn't an horrendous situation, given where some other authorities who've been in these sorts of situations have found themselves, where they've ended up sort of multiple years out of sync, and some are still catching up. So, you know, it's still a lot of work to get through, but we are confident that, you know, it'll only be the 2 years that will be affected by this rather significant issue. Section 4 and 4.1 in particular just sets out some of the some of the risks to achieving that recovery plan. One of the risks was the time required to complete the restatement work, because it was a bit of an unknown quantity, given how many years back we needed to go and the fact it's quite unprecedented in nature. But actually, as I've just said, we've pretty much concluded that. So as a risk, it's very low now, as long as we've done it correctly, which, you know, I've got every reason to think we have. So that's no longer a major risk. External audit resource is mainly a risk if we can't stick to the timescales we've suggested. The auditors have confirmed when they should be available. So, you know, we've worked in good partnership around that particular topic, so I'm fairly comfortable there. In terms of our own internal resources, It is going to be a challenge, particularly in the autumn period, because I'll need officers to pick up accounts work and audit work at a time of year where they wouldn't normally be doing that. And it will coincide with some of the budget preparation work. But generally speaking, it's not the same officers working on the two. So I've not got too much concern there. And we now have better resource than we did a year ago because we filled vacancies and other posts within the service. So it is a risk, but one that we're confident of managing. Completion of the 25/6 accounts can only be concluded once the 24/5 accounts are audited and signed off. That will constrain the amount of time we've got to do the 25/6 accounts, and it will be a shorter period than we ordinarily would have. However, we are able to progress sort of elements of the accounts in advance of the 24/5 accounts being signed off, because some parts of accounts aren't dependent on that asset rework. So the idea is that we'll get to late summer and a proportion of the accounts will be done, and then the residual amount will be done once the 24/5 accounts are signed off, and that work will take place in October. So it's a risk, but again, it's one that we're managing. And then going forward, I think the bigger risk is probably on the audit side, given that audit timescales are contracting. So for the 26 accounts, there will only be 2 months available for the audit. No, 3 months, sorry, available for the audit work, which is less than it's taken in recent years. But we're doing our best to review the way that we operate in terms of our working papers. We're enhancing our internal quality assurance process to try and make sure that what we present to the auditors is as good as it can be. And if I'm totally honest, that's not been the case in recent years. So we're doing what we can to give the auditors a really polished set of accounts and working papers so that their work is then able to be done in a quicker time than it would have been done previously. We'll also look at doing early audit work as much as we possibly can. So that's where we are in terms of the accounts. Like I said, it's just an update at this point. We will obviously bring the final 24/5 accounts here for review before they go to full council and ultimately to the Auditor General for Wales for certification. That may require a special meeting as we've done in the past. It will all depend on how things align in terms of timescales. But ultimately where we are, I feel that we're in a better position than we would have been sort of 6 to 9 months ago. We're confident on what we need to do and that we can achieve it. But yeah, happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you very much. Anybody got any questions or queries about this regard to the report? Councillor Jones, your hand's raised.
Yeah, thank you, Rob, for that report. You explained that there'd be an ongoing difficulty with the 25/26 accounts. Is it likely we'll get another sort of breach letter this time next year?
I can't speak because there's been a change in Auditor General. So I think part of the letter, or part of the reason behind the letters that we all received was a little bit of a, I'll call it a parting shot. Perhaps that's not the best words, but from the outgoing Auditor General, because this has been a live topic amongst all councils and the auditors for quite a long time. And to be fair to Audit Wales, as a collective, we haven't really held up our end of the bargain in terms of delivery of accounts and good quality accounts. I mean us, there's 22 local authorities in Wales. As for the new Auditor General, I don't know what their stance will be, but if we do get a letter, I would like I said, I'd be hopeful that by that point we'll be back on track and we'll be able to demonstrate that we're in a good place going forward. So if we do get a letter, I would hope that it would acknowledge the work that we've done and that we'd be able to respond in a positive way.
Thank you. Mr Rees, your hand's raised.
Diolch yn fawr, Chair, and diolch, Rob, for updating us on where we are. It is what it is, and we can't avoid that. I mean, I think it illustrates how well the external audit system works, in that it highlighted this and then we as a council have responded to it. I'd like to specifically ask, though, that because the accounts have been delayed and we haven't officially endorsed them, that we are compliant as a council in terms of Welsh Government legislation. I just wanted to make sure that that is still all okay. And then in terms of when the draft audited accounts come to us for endorsement, I believe in the report it mentions something about trying to slot it in with whenever our next scheduled meetings might be. But my opinion is that as soon as they are ready, that we should try and have a specific meeting just to make sure that that is all approved as soon as possible. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you for your questions. I think just in terms of the second point around a special meeting, I think that is more likely than not going to be the case, because our aim is to have the accounts pretty much done, the 24/5 accounts, by the end of September. I think the next meeting scheduled after that would be December. So ideally we would have a special committee meeting to consider those, because we want to get then onto council and ultimately to the Auditor General. I think the only reason it would slot in is if there were any delays beyond the timeframes that we're talking about and it happened to coincide. But no, I think we will be looking at a special meeting for the 24/5 accounts, and may well be the case for the 25/6 accounts as well. In terms of Welsh Government, so Welsh Government are well aware of our situation. We have complied in terms of publishing notices to say that the accounts are not yet signed off. So yeah, I don't believe there's any concerns where Welsh Government's either awareness or sort of compliance is concerned.
Thank you. Councillor Ashley, your hand's raised.
I was looking at capacity. You did say you felt you had the capacity. I mean, there's several capacity questions here. We hear Audit Wales saying on other matters that they deal with whether they have the capacity. I note in the letter that you have meetings of various bodies which obviously discuss and monitor, I can't think of the right word, scrutinise, that's what I was thinking of, obviously from your level and across the various bodies. But it does raise the question of knock-on effect, which I think my colleagues have also said, whether we get this in on time and whether we get it signed off. It's always a question with audit, isn't it? Are you comfortable with or comforted in the fact that you think you can do this? Or I also noted in there about new machinery within the council. I mean, does that help?
Can you come back on that?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Ashley. Can I just clarify the second point? What was
Yeah,
your very last point there?
you obviously, this is a historical problem as much as anything else, and you're having to use capacity within our council to go back over or again and extract the information you need. So from what I've read in the letter, that we've got new systems in place.
Okay, yeah, thanks. It's not so much that we've got new systems specifically. It's the issue that we're grappling with is to do with the sequencing of certain steps that we take around asset accounting. So from a systems perspective, it wasn't the system that was necessarily the issue, it was our use of the system and the way we fed information in. So that's what we're having to unpick, and effectively we're having to unpick all the historic transactions and then put them all back in, but in the right order. The information generally was okay. We have the information we need to be able to do that. And unfortunately, we do now have the capacity. I think a year ago or just over, we were very low on capacity due to vacancies and other staffing challenges. We're still dealing with some of those, but not to the same extent. And we've been fortunate that we actually recruited an individual who has been able, quite impressively, to pick this topic up with no prior experience and work through it all pretty much single-handedly. If we hadn't had that resource, we'd have been looking at either a much more elongated time frame or more likely having to bring in some sort of external resource, whether it be on a temporary or fixed-term basis. But no, internally we're okay. And I think going forward, we're fortunate that our accounts aren't the most complicated compared to some other authorities. You know, we don't have our own housing stock, so we don't have housing revenue account to do. We don't have subsidiaries that require group accounts. So I think the team that we've got in place, once all posts are filled, is adequate, both in terms of capacity but also capability as well. Hopefully that helps to answer the question.
Yeah, my only worry is obviously we've got 24, 25, and then we've got 20, 25. All the dates you know them only too well. They're all running in parallel. Then obviously we've got to do a budget come Christmas time. So councillors are only too well aware of all this. That knock on, does that have an effect on that budget or not? I'm just wondering, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't think there's a small period of time where there might be some competing priorities, but fortunately the way things, or partly the way we've planned it out, is a lot of the intensive budget work that the team would be involved in takes place late summer, early autumn. From that point onwards, it tends to be myself and other senior members of the team who are involved in finalising all the budget work. And the team that will largely be working on the accounts is a separate team that aren't that involved in the budget process. So I think all in all we can just about manage it, but it is critical that's why it's critical we stick to the timeframes that we've outlined, because if this work starts to slip, it will then start to encroach on the budget prep work. But at the moment we're comfortable that both of those competing priorities can be managed.
Thank you there, Rob.
Thank you very much for that report. Obviously there's an awful lot of hard work, and it seems as if you've got a handle on it and you feel confident that you can take it on forward. With regard to that then, members, the recommendations for this report are on page 20 of the agenda. Please can you state if you're against the recommendations or wish to abstain, otherwise I'll take them all as agreed. I see no abstentions, so we'll take it as agreed. Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 7, which is the Treasury Management Outline Report. Again, Robert Green, Head of Financial Services, please can you present this one for us? Thank
you, Chair. So this is the outturn report for Treasury Management for 25-26. You'll be aware that as a committee you receive the Treasury Management Strategy for the year to consider before Council approve it, and you also receive a mid-year report. So this is simply one that follows on from that and summarises our final position for the year. So I won't run through the report in too much detail, just to pick out a few sort of key points. I suppose critically, this preparation and presentation of this report fulfills the requirements upon us laid out in the CIPFA Code of Practice on Treasury Management and the Prudential Code. So that's the main reason for this report to come here. In terms of our performance, you'll see that in section 3 it sets out our borrowing position. Overall, our level of outstanding borrowing or debt has reduced from the previous financial year, which is a positive. Most of that movement has been in our temporary borrowing between us and other local authorities. But yeah, critically, we haven't had to take out any long-term borrowing at this point, given that we've got a generally flatlined or reducing capital finance requirement, but also the fact that interest rates are still relatively high. So we don't want to, if we can avoid it, lock into high interest loans at this point. We'd rather manage it on a temporary basis, and short-term loans generally are cheaper than long-term loans at this point. We're also maximising our internal borrowing capacity, so that's effectively where we're using our own cash resources instead of actual borrowing. So we're running down our investments to a minimum manageable level, because generally the interest you lose on investments is less than the interest you would pay on external loans, which is generally the cheaper form of managing our cash flow requirements. As it says there in the report, we've taken substantial loans with other local authorities. Generally, because they're temporary loans, they are lower in terms of rate, and it means we haven't got the cost of carry involved with longer-term loans, whilst rates remain high. In terms of investments, just at the paragraph 3.2.3 and 4 sets out our investment position. And just to highlight that we have maintained our minimum £10 million investment level, partly for two reasons. One, to make sure we've always got cash should we need it, but also it ensures we retain our MiFID II status, which basically means we get access to better borrowing products through the PWLB. So we've ensured that through investing with other local authorities. So as I said, we borrow from some local authorities and we lend to some local authorities, as well as other bodies and products such as money market funds. You can see in paragraph 3.2.5, our weighted investment return on average was 4.6%, which is lower than the year before, but that's because interest rates are generally lower than they were the year before. However, critically, we have exceeded one of the industry's standard benchmarks, the SONIA rate, which was 4.011, so we're a good 0.5% above that. So actually we're quite comfortable that our investment performance has been good over the last 12 months. In terms of the Prudential Code and our compliance with prudential indicators, we've complied with all of our indicators. There is one exception, however, which is the one set out in 3.3.5. It's a bit of a strange one because it's about sensitivity to interest rate exposure. So it's the idea is that we want to minimise the amount of variable rate products we have, whether that be loans or investments, to minimise the exposure we have to interest rate fluctuations. So on the borrowing side, we had no variable rate products at all, so we had zero exposure to that. On the investment side, because our investments are generally short-term, they are variable through money market funds and other products. And actually, we did hold higher investment balances throughout the year than we anticipated, but that's simply a product of having more cash to hand than we thought we would need or thought we would have. So what it means is we've technically exceeded the indicator, but actually interest rate movements in terms of bank rate during the year were lower than 1%, which is what the indicator is predicated on. So we've actually performed, the actual impact has been less than we would have thought when the indicator was set. So it's a bit of a strange one. It's quite hard to explain. It's quite hard even to get my head around. But so in pure terms, we haven't quite met that indicator, but our actual performance has been a positive in comparison to it. So what I'm saying is it's nothing to be concerned about from my perspective. And I think the ones to really take note of are the indicators set out in 3.3.8. So there are external debt indicators. We have the authorised limit for external debt, which is our absolute limit that we cannot breach without council approval. We have our operational boundary, which is really the one that we aim for, which can be temporarily breached. But in the case of both, we didn't breach them at all during the year, so we're well within those, and they are the critical ones, because, as I said, we'd have to go back to council to get approval to vary those. The only other part of the report just to highlight is the capital programme section in 3.4. I won't go through it, but it just gives an overview of our capital programme position. This has already been reported to Cabinet as part of the wider financial outturn report that went to Cabinet in early June. It just highlights that we had slippage of 3.74 million at the end of the year, which is actually, it's not a small figure, but as a proportion of the total programme, it isn't too bad, and it's definitely better than in previous years. Other than that, just to highlight paragraph 4.2, just gives an overview and says, we're comfortable that we've been successful in managing our cash flow requirements. We've adhered to the approved prudential indicators, with the exception of that one quirk, and we believe that our strategy has kept interest costs as low as possible for the council, and we've avoided locking into long-term borrowing whilst interest rates remain high, given that they are generally higher than they have been, and the long-term outlook, as our Treasury advisors are suggesting, is a more steady decline, but a decline still. So ultimately, we'd want to hold off until interest rates are a little bit more favourable before locking into anything long term. Okay, happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Have we got any questions with regards to this report, please? No? I think you've explained it very well. You bamboozle there, yeah. No, I appreciate that you put it in easy terms, because finance is not my thing. But no, it's a very in-depth report, so thank you for explaining it. So if nobody's got any questions with regards to this report, the recommendations are on page 37. And if nobody's got any objections or queries, we'll take them as read, and it does come in several parts. So I recommend that Governance and Audit Committee notes and provides comments where appropriate. So we're all happy with this report? Yeah, we've got the thumbs up. Thank you. Thank you very much. Right, that takes us on to agenda item 8, which is the update on external regulatory reports. Mr. Tom Roberts, please can you present this report for us?
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. As members are aware, the Governance and Audit Committee receives a 6-monthly update on the progress made delivering the Council's action plan for governance and improvement. This is the key mechanism for monitoring progress against recommendations and proposals for improvement arising from our external regulators, including Audit Wales. I'm primarily bringing this report here today to inform members that we have now changed the scheduling so that going forward this regular report will now be received by this committee at your June-July meeting, i.e. this one, and the one that takes place in December. This represents a change from the previous autumn and spring updates. The rationale for this change is to better align with new wider corporate assurance mechanisms, particularly reporting this information to the Council's Joint Executive Team. Although I've attached the action plan as Appendix 1, it remains the same as the report received by this committee in March, as there have been no significant changes to the action plan during this period. As far as any new work is concerned, and again, I feel like I need to apologise for bringing a lack of information today. Again, members should note there is no new external regulatory reports that have been received since the committee's last update in March 2026. Therefore, the report primarily seeks to provide assurance that appropriate monitoring arrangements will remain in place going forward, and for members to note the revised reporting timetable. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So that's the explanation why there's no part 2 in the report.
Yeah, essentially, like I said, we're now... Sorry. Previously, we've been doing nearly all of our reporting against our regulatory activity just into this committee. We've recognised that we need to do reporting into the Joint Executive Team as well. In doing so, we wanted to make sure everything aligns rather than is, so we get the most out of the work that we do on the assurance processes. So by reporting into JET first, then we can bring that same information through into this committee. So this I feel is the best way of doing that.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. I did wonder why part 2 had disappeared, but that explains it. Thank you. Has anybody got any questions or queries with regard to this report, please? No, we're all happy. With regards to the recommendations to remove them, do we have to agree these individually, or can they just be taken away?
Sorry, like I said, I should have made that clear actually. Those decisions to remove those items were made back in March.
Right.
That, like I said, I just put the action plan for March into this report just to remind members of the information received. Those decisions were already made back in March.
Well, I'm wondering. Sorry, thank you. Thanks for that explanation. Right, has anybody got any questions or queries with regard to this now? No. Recommendations are on page 41 of the agenda. Please can you state if you're against the recommendations or wish to abstain? Otherwise we'll take them as agreed. So nobody's saying anything against it. Thank you, we'll take them as agreed. Right. We've already dealt with agenda item 9, so we're moving on to now agenda item 10, Head of Internal Audit, Annual Report and Opinion. Mr. Peter Williams, please can you give us your report?
Thank you, Chair. Morning all. This is obviously the annual report with my opinion on our sort of internal control mechanisms, which is a build-up of the quarterly reports I bring to each audit committee. The key message, as outlined on the first page of the report, page 91, is that I've concluded that the authority operates in a sound capacity. The annual opinion is consistent with previous years, and we've maintained that performance for a number of years. It dipped 2 years ago down to reliable, but sound is the sort of the best I can give. So you know, it's quite a positive opinion from our perspective. But the basis of that opinion is then based on the work the team has undertaken throughout the year. For example, paragraph 3.1 on page 92 and Appendix A shows the opinions on what I call the 12 main core systems in the authority. Those are the systems which we audit on an annual basis. As you can see, 6 of those now have a full opinion and 6 have a substantial opinion. And I don't think we've been at that position before. There've been various iterations, but that's probably the best we've been in a number of years. Again, similarly, paragraph 3.5, page 93, shows the comprehensive range of work carried out in the year across all service areas. The sort of totality of the work we carried out is something like 90, if I get my maths are right, 92 pieces of work. which are 31 systems audits carried out and 31 follow-up audits. And that is across the whole range of the services, as outlined in the table in paragraph 3.5. Resources, adults and communities, neighbours and environment, children and families, economy and place, the SRS, and we do one grant audit as well. Paragraph 3.7 and Appendix B shows the opinions of all the work carried out, not just the main core systems. And as you can see in paragraph 3.7, I bring out the fact that, summarising the opinions, 86% of the opinions we gave were either of a full or a substantial nature. So that again is the evidential base for me providing the opinion that I've given. Paragraph 3.8 touches on the areas of concern which I previously brought to the Council. We only identified 2 high priorities in the year in all the work we carried out. We will be carrying out follow-up of those audits in the current year. I think they were in the elective homeschool education system. And of the opinions we've given, there were only 2 audits with limited opinions. They were on the community or governance arrangements and our third sector major grants. Both those will have a follow-up undertaken in the current year, so I'll report back, excuse me, on the progress we made that during the year. Paragraph 3.11 talks specifically about the follow-up audit opinions in Appendix C, and if you look at Appendix C, you can see that all the opinions are going in the right direction. The direction of travel is a positive one in terms of the improvements we recommend are accepted by service areas and are subsequently being implemented in a timely fashion. The remaining bits of the report just outline some of the areas we do. Obviously, it's not primarily a finance-based audits. We do IT, information technology audits at the SRS, which covers all the partners in the SRS, Monmouth, Gwent, Newport, etc. We do a number of education and school audits. We do a number of what I call, on paragraph 3.16, non-financial governance audits. We look at electoral registration. We look at the HETRC project, records management, safeguarding, executive decision-making, etc., which are not financial audits, but are all part of our governance systems and arrangements. Page 95, paragraph 4, talks about fraud strategy and fraud testing. Obviously, there's been reports in the year that I brought the authority, mainly as the audit wills review that was done, which was a positive one in terms of our approach to fraud. And our approach has always been, we carried extensive testing across a number of systems each year, and the objective is to reduce the risk of fraud and error. Pleased to announce hardly any fraud investigations during the year, and the ones they do were really of a minimal nature, to be honest with you. So that's another positive that hopefully we're going in the right direction. Paragraph 6 on page 96 talks about the performance of internal audit. Like all services in the Council, we have a service plan and a raft of performance indicators to undertake and see we've met the targets, and I'm pleased to report, as you can see in the table, that we've achieved what we set out in the target, so we maintain that sort of level of performance. Under the audit standards, the global internal audit standards, we have to produce what's called, apologies for all these acronyms, they're not mine. We have to produce what's called a Quality Assurance Improvement Programme, or QAIP. I've got that in Appendix D, and that shows the quality processes embedded within the team that we undertake to make sure we maintain the standards and comply with those global internal audit standards. I think that's probably all I wanted to bring to your attention. It's just to summarise, overall it's a very positive position, and I'm pleased to answer any questions anybody may have on any aspects of the report.
Thank you very much. Quite an in-depth report. Anybody got any questions or queries with regards to it? Councillor Jones, your hand's raised.
Yeah, Chair, just to say how reassured I am by this report, and thank the officers for all the work that goes on. Thank you.
Yes, I quite agree. It's very reassuring. And these reports that come to our committee, there is such a lot of work that goes on to it. And we just get the people who come and present it, but I can appreciate the work that goes behind it as well. Anybody else got any questions or queries? No. Okay, the recommendations for this are on page 97. If nobody's got any further queries or abstentions, we'll take it as read. Right, we'll take them as agreed. Thank you. Moving on now to agenda item 11, which is the internal audit plan. Peter Williams, over to you again.
Thank you, Chair. Just a short sort of update report. Obviously, I presented the draft audit plan to Audit Committee in the March 2026 meeting, and there was a caveat in that, but there was still some consultation going on with some service areas, and just reporting back that that consultation has now ended, and there's no changes to the programme for the year, and we're already cracking on with that, and you'll have reports on the progress on that in subsequent audit committees.
Thank you very much for that. That was brief and to the point. Anybody got any questions or queries with regard to this update report? No. Okay, so recommendations are on page 110. If there's no abstentions, we'll take them as agreed. Okay, thank you. Thank you everybody for that one. Right, agenda item 12, which is our own little report now, our draft annual report to Council. So please, if anybody's got anything to add to this report, which is the one I should be taking to Council next month, no, this month, later on this month, please can you have input now? I'll hand you over to Peter Williams, who's helped me put it together.
Morning all. Yeah, it's a consistent format with the previous years. I think this is the third year we've done this report now, annual report to Council. It's seen as good practice, and it sort of raises the work we do. You know, sometimes governance goes under the agenda a bit, to be honest, in terms of the work of the audit committee, and so this puts us sort of front and centre of Council to sort of promote the good work we do in terms of the assurance, etc. So, like I said, this report is very similar to previous years. It outlines the work the committee has undertaken in the year, what it's monitored, what's achieved. It gives a bit about attendance. Drafted in conjunction with Mrs. Peggington, and you know, if there are any queries or adjustments or additions or whatever you need to add, if you can get them to me within a week or so, and then, you know, once it's finalised, I then put it on the council agenda, which I think is the 21st of July. Thank you.
So, although I'm presenting this report, this is your report. This is a report of the results of what we've done throughout the last 12 months as a committee. So if you want to add anything to it, or correct anything, or change anything, the next couple of days is a chance to do it. Has anybody got anything to add, questions, query? Mr. Rees, your hand's raised.
Diolch, Catherine, and diolch, Peter, for putting this together. And I've got nothing to say that needs to be changed in it at all. It's it is what it is, and it informs the council officially on what we as a committee has been doing. What I'd like to bring up is, as Peter mentioned there, it's good best practice to be doing this, and we've been doing it now for about 3 years. When we kicked off doing it, we undertook the SIPFA self-assessment of the work of the committee amongst ourselves to assess our performance, if you like. We only did a part assessment. We didn't do the full self-assessment process. And what I'm sort of suggesting is that by the time we have our next annual report back to the council for 26-27, then I think we should have undertaken another SIPFA self-assessment and undertaking the full-blown exercise. So just something to dwell upon over the next year. Diolch.
Okay, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, I got no problem with that. I can sort that out and program that in for some time during the year, so we can undertake that. I've got no issue with that at all, if that's what members want. Yeah.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you, Peter. And thank you, Catherine, and I'm more than happy to help out with it, having had to do it with another committee that I sit upon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the offer of help. Anybody else got anything else to add, or we're happy with this report? Okay, fine, we'll take that as agreed then. Moving on to agenda item 13, which is the Audit Committee Work Programme. Peter, you've got something to say about that?
It's just there for information. It's obviously draft, it can change, and I'd probably amend it after this meeting to incorporate some of Rob's timetables around the statement of accounts 24-25. I'll probably put in prior to the December one in terms of a potential special one, but you know, taking all this on board, it is flexible, but you know, that's mainly there for information purposes.
Okay, thank you. Well, agenda item 14 is the date of the next meeting, which currently is the 24th of September 26. So, thank you all for your attendance. Thank you all for those who presented reports. Thank you for everybody's input. I'm going to see you all at the next meeting. Thank you again for reinstating me. Cheerio. Bye.